She didn't expect the first punch to come from a plastic cup. But that's exactly what happened at Gate C14 when a flight attendant leaned down, stared at the exhausted black teen in front of her, and said, "Water isn't free, sweetheart. Ask your guardian to pay for it." The words didn't land like policy, they landed like judgment. The teen's lips were dry from a 6-hour delay, her backpack still on one shoulder, her boarding pass crumpled in her palm. People nearby slowed their steps, sensing a storm gathering before they even knew who it was meant for. And just a few feet away, someone in a gray suit was approaching, unnoticed, unseen, and absolutely the wrong person to provoke. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, back to our main character. She arrived at the counter just as the flight attendant snapped. "If you can't follow simple instructions, step aside and stop holding the line." The girl froze, shoulders tight, the way someone freezes when they're used to being talked over. The attendant sighed loudly, the kind of sigh meant to humiliate, not to breathe. A security officer glanced over, already judging the scene without context. "Is there a problem?" he asked, hand hovering near his belt. "Yes," the attendant said quickly, pointing at the teen. "She's causing issues and demanding free service." The teen tried to speak, voice small. "I just needed quiet." The attendant cut in, sharp as a slap. That was the moment the woman in the gray suit stepped between them. No earrings, no designer bag, no entourage, just presence, calm, centered, unshakable. The security officer sized her up instantly, eyes narrowing at everything except the truth. "Ma'am," he barked, "I need you to step back. This area is for priority passengers." She didn't move. "She asked for water," the woman said. "That's all." "Ma'am, don't escalate," the attendant warned, clutching her radio like a weapon made of plastic and ego. The officer reached out, grabbing the woman's wrist as if she were the threat, not the one trying to stop it. The teen gasped softly. The woman didn't pull away. She simply looked down at his grip, then back up at him with a stillness that made the hallway feel colder. The kind of stillness that wasn't fear. The kind that comes from knowing exactly who you are and exactly how big the mistake in front of you is. "Let go," she said quietly. The officer didn't. Not yet. Not until it was far, far too late. Because in the next few minutes, everyone at Gate C14 would learn the same truth. The woman he grabbed wasn't just anybody. She was the one person they should never have laid a hand on. The officer did not release her wrist right away. His grip tightened for just a second, the kind of second that tells you everything about a person who believes their authority is absolute. Naomi Reed did not pull back. She did not raise her voice. She simply looked at him with a level calm that made the teen behind her whisper, "Mom, please." The flight attendant shifted her stance, emboldened by the officer's presence, and spoke into her radio with a tone that sounded more like performance than protocol. Gate C14 reporting continued noncompliance. "We may need full removal." People began to turn now. A businessman lowered his laptop. A mother with a stroller stopped mid-stride. A teenager holding a smoothie quietly hit record on his phone. The air did not just thicken, it tilted. Something was shifting, the way it shifts right before the truth steps into the room. Naomi finally spoke. "Remove your hand," she said. Her words were soft. Her meaning was not. The officer scoffed as if patience were a commodity he did not owe her. "Ma'am, you need to calm down and step away. You are in a restricted area for priority guests. If you do not follow instructions, we will escalate further." The teen tried again. "She is my mother." The flight attendant cut her off sharply. "Do not interrupt. If you two cannot follow rules, that is not our problem. We do not reward difficult passengers." It was that phrase, difficult passengers, that hit Naomi like an echo from another lifetime. She remembered being 25, standing at a hotel counter in Houston in her thrift store blazer, being told she did not fit the profile of a corporate booking. She remembered the long pause before the clerk said he would need to verify her story. She remembered the shame that crawled beneath her skin but never made it to her face. She swallowed it then. She would not swallow it now. The officer shifted his stance and adjusted his belt, the universal signal that he believed a situation was about to go his way. "You are holding up paying customers," he said. "Step aside or you will be escorted off airport property. Final warning." Naomi tilted her head slightly, studying him the same way she would study an underperforming department head who believed he could talk his way out of numbers that told a different story. "You are making a mistake," she said. "I would like you to think very carefully before you take your next action." The flight attendant gave a short laugh, sharp and dismissive. "Think carefully? About what?" "You are standing in the wrong place at the wrong time. That is the only mistake here." Naomi did not react. She reached for her phone with her free hand, tapped once, and lifted it to her ear. Her voice was steady. "Carla, initiate Delta 9. Confirm full monitoring." Carla did not hesitate. "Confirmed, Dr. Reed. Audio, visual, and staff logs are now live. The system has been notified." The officer blinked, not understanding, but suddenly uneasy. The flight attendant's confidence wavered for the first time. "Who exactly are you calling?" Naomi answered without drama. "Someone who listens." The trainee from earlier, the one who had scanned the teen's boarding pass, stepped forward again despite the tremor in his hands. "Sir," he said to the officer, "I saw her daughter's ticket. She is a premium passenger." They did not check. They refused service before looking. The flight attendant snapped, "Do not speak for me." But her voice cracked on the last word. A crack is all truth ever needs. A murmur rippled through the gate. Someone whispered, "She did not even ask the girl what she needed." Another said, "Why are they grabbing her?" She did nothing. The officer stiffened, realizing the eyes had shifted. Not toward Naomi. Not toward the teen. Toward him. Naomi looked down at his hand still wrapped around her wrist. "Last time," she said calmly. "Let go." This time he did. Not because he respected her, but because something inside him, some instinct older than his training, told him he had just crossed a line he could not see yet. The flight attendant planted her feet and tried to reclaim control. "That does not change anything. We have procedures. We will have both of you escorted out. I am calling for backup." Naomi stepped forward, not aggressive, simply undeniable. "No," she said. "What you are doing is profiling. What you are doing is abusing a position you did not earn. And what you are doing," she added, looking at the officer, "is detaining the wrong woman." The gate went silent. Even the conveyor belts seemed to go quiet. And then, over the flight attendant's radio, a voice crackled through, calm but unmistakably urgent. "All staff hold. Executive override request from Dr. Naomi Reed has been received. Stand by." The flight attendant's face drained. The officer's shoulders locked. The trainee exhaled sharply, and passengers leaned in, sensing they were standing in the middle of something that was no longer just about water, or rules, or a delay. Something larger. Something long overdue. Naomi glanced at her daughter, then back at the staff in front of her. "You wanted escalation," she said quietly. "Now you have it." And Gate C14 would never forget what happened next. The announcement over the radio did not just freeze the gate. It silenced every assumption that had been made about Naomi Reed. The flight attendant lowered her hand slowly, as if the device in it had turned hot. The officer glanced toward his supervisor across the terminal, as if hoping someone would step in and explain what was happening, but no one moved. Passengers leaned closer, phones raised but forgotten, because they felt something shifting in the air, something that did not happen in airports, something that did not happen to people like them, but absolutely should have happened a long time ago. Naomi did not raise her chin. She did not posture. She simply waited with the patience of a woman who had been underestimated more times than she could count. The flight attendant tried again, her voice wobbling this time. "This is a misunderstanding. She is just trying to intimidate us. She has no authority here." But even she did not believe the words as they came out of her mouth. The trainee swallowed hard and stepped forward again. She does have authority," he said. His voice was young but steady. "I recognize her name. She is Dr. Naomi Reed." The flight attendant snapped. That does not mean anything. But murmurs spread through the watching crowd, spreading faster than the attendant could smother them. Someone whispered, "Wait, I know that name." Another said, "I saw her on Forbes." And then a third voice, an older man in a navy blazer, said plainly, "She is one of the largest private funders of this airline's innovation program." The officer stiffened. The flight attendant froze. Naomi's daughter clutched her backpack straps tighter, as if suddenly understanding that her mother was not just her mother. She was someone they should never have touched. The flight attendant attempted to recover her authority, but the veneer of confidence had cracked beyond repair. Regardless of who she is, she caused a disturbance. We followed procedure. Naomi turned her head just slightly, her gaze cutting through the lie without raising its volume. Your procedure, she said, was shaped entirely by your assumptions. You decided who we were before you asked a single question. The officer shifted uncomfortably, feeling the eyes of the crowd pressing down on him like a weight. Ma'am, we are willing to de-escalate if you comply. Naomi held his gaze. You put your hands on me before you heard a single fact. You threatened to remove my daughter for asking for water. That is not de-escalation. That is prejudice with a badge. The flight attendant's face flushed bright red. That is not true. You were both being disruptive. Naomi did not respond. She did not need to. The crowd had already seen enough. A woman with a stroller shook her head. They did not even listen to the girl. A college student near the charging station said. She asked for water. That is it. A middle-aged father added. You did not treat them the same way you treated the other passengers. We all saw it. The officer rubbed the back of his neck, frustration and fear mixing in his stance. Dr. Reed, if there has been any misunderstanding, we can resolve this quietly. Naomi reached for her phone again. Carla, confirm staff log activity for Gate C14. Carla's voice came through instantly, crisp as glass. Confirmed, Dr. Reed. The log shows that the attendant denied service prior to checking the passenger's class of travel. It also shows a premature threat escalation by security. A few gasps rose from the gate. The flight attendant's mouth fell open. That is privileged information, she sputtered. You cannot access that. Carla replied calmly. Dr. Reed can access anything tied to her own airline investments. The officer took a step back as if trying to physically retreat from the truth spreading across the polished floor. Naomi's voice remained steady. I told you to think very carefully before acting. This is why. The flight attendant shook her head rapidly, panic finally showing through the cracks of her professionalism. You set us up. Naomi corrected her. No. I walked in quietly, dressed plainly, asking for nothing more than respect. The test was yours, not mine. Her daughter stepped closer to her side, the teen now understanding the gravity of what she had witnessed. The officer opened his mouth, searching for a defense, but the radio clipped to his shoulder interrupted him with a tone sharp enough to cut the room in half. Security Team Bravo, hold your position. Executive Command Review in progress. Await further instruction. The flight attendant's knees bent slightly, as if her body were trying not to collapse. Naomi looked at her, then at the officer, then at every witness who had watched the entire situation unfold. This did not start with water, she said. It started with the moment you decided who we were. The gate did not breathe. The passengers did not blink. The fluorescent lights above seemed to lean in. And Naomi added, now you will learn who we actually are. And Gate C14 braced itself for the moment everything would turn. The shift did not come with shouting. It came with silence, the kind that tightens the air before a verdict drops. The officer straightened his shoulders as if that might rebuild the authority slipping away from him. The flight attendant pressed her lips together, refusing to look at the passengers whose eyes were burning holes straight through her confidence. Naomi Reed did not advance or retreat. She simply stood where she was, as if the floor itself had decided she belonged there more than anyone else. Then the radio on the officer's shoulder crackled again, this time with a voice no one at Gate C14 had heard before. Gate C14 personnel, corporate compliance is now monitoring your station. All actions will be reviewed. For misconduct and bias escalation. Hold position. The officer's jaw tightened. The flight attendant's hands began to tremble. The trainee swallowed hard, but for the first time, his eyes held something like hope. A woman with a stroller murmured, good. Someone is finally watching. And someone else whispered, about time. The flight attendant tried one last attempt to seize control. This is excessive. She is exaggerating. Nobody mistreated anyone. We simply followed protocol. Naomi turned her head slowly, and the movement alone corrected the lie. Your protocol, she said, was used as a weapon. You denied service based on your assumptions, not on any policy written in this airport. The trainee stepped forward again, finding his courage in the truth rather than in his uniform. "She is right," he said. "They did not check anything." The girl scanned through premium. They denied her instantly. The officer glared at him. "Trainee, this is not your place." But the young man stood his ground. "It is absolutely my place when someone is being treated unfairly." And I saw what happened. A soft wave of support rippled through the crowd. Someone said, "Let him speak." Another added, "He is telling the truth." For the first time, the officer's facade wavered. His eyes darted across the gate, searching for support, but all he found were witnesses who refused to be silent. Naomi lifted her phone again with quiet precision. "Carla," she said, "confirm escalation log visibility." Carla replied instantly, her voice leveling the room. "Dr. Reed, compliance confirms that all recorded behavior at Gate C14 is now visible to the Internal Review Board. The footage and audio have been downloaded. The board is watching live." The flight attendant let out a sharp breath, not quite a gasp, but close enough to reveal fear. "Why is the board involved?" Naomi answered calmly. "Because bias is not a mistake. It is a pattern, and patterns require oversight." The officer interjected, voice cracking at the edges. "Dr. Reed, if you just step aside, we can address this without corporate involvement." Naomi's daughter stepped closer to her, her voice barely above a whisper. "Mom, it is okay. We can just move." Naomi placed a steady hand on her daughter's shoulder. "No, you deserve better than to shrink for someone else's prejudice." Her daughter's eyes glistened, not with fear this time, but with realization. Naomi looked back at the staff. "You treated her like a problem before she spoke a single word. You treated me like a threat before I took a single step." A man in a suit near the charging station spoke up. "She is right. I have flown this airline for 20 years. I have never seen service denied so quickly." A mother holding a toddler added. "They did not even ask if she was okay." The flight attendant tried once more, desperation bleeding through her voice. "I did what I thought was best for the safety of passengers." Naomi replied, "Safety is not an excuse for discrimination." At that exact moment, the officer's radio chimed again, but this time the tone was different. "Urgent. Final. Security Unit Bravo. Halt all interventions at Gate C14. Executive Command Review in effect. Wait for direct instruction from oversight." The officer froze. His authority, real or imagined, evaporated. Naomi glanced at him, her expression neither cruel nor smug. It was simply the expression of someone who had carried this weight before and refused to carry it one moment longer. "You grabbed me," she said. "You threatened my daughter. And you justified all of it without knowing anything about us." The flight attendant's voice cracked as she whispered, "We did not know who you were." Naomi took one step forward. "Not aggressive, just enough. You should not need to know who I am to treat us with dignity." The room went still. Even the automated announcements paused, as if the entire terminal was listening. And then Naomi said the words that shifted the ground under Gate C14. "This is where accountability begins." The passengers held their breath, because they knew the next moments would decide everything. The officer's radio emitted another sharp tone, but this time the voice behind it carried a weight none of them could ignore. "Compliance to Gate C14. All personnel stand by. Additional review in progress." The words did not echo through the terminal, but they carried enough force to make the flight attendant's knees soften and the officer's hand instinctively drop to his side. Naomi Reed did not speak right away. She let the room breathe, or rather, let the room realize it had been holding its breath. Her daughter stayed close, one small hand gripping the strap of her backpack, eyes flicking between her mother and the staff who had tried to humiliate them. The trainee, still trying to steady his breathing, stepped closer. "Dr. Reed," he said quietly, "I am sorry. I saw what happened. I tried to do the right thing earlier, but they told me to stay silent." Naomi looked at him, the calm in her expression shifting into something gentler. "You did speak," she said. "That is more than most." His shoulders relaxed slightly, as if those words alone had lifted a weight that did not belong to him in the first place. The flight attendant, however, found her voice again, though it trembled like a loose wire. "This situation has escalated beyond reason. You are making things worse than they are. We did not intend to offend anyone." Naomi's gaze cut to her. "Offense is not a matter of intention. It is a matter of impact. And your impact was very clear." The attendant tried to stand taller, but her composure was already slipping. We were protecting the flight environment. You were in a restricted area. Naomi replied, I was standing next to my daughter. That is not restricted territory. That is my responsibility. Before the attendant could speak again, Naomi's phone buzzed softly in her hand. She lifted it to her ear. Carla, status update. Carla's voice was measured and firm. Dr. Reed, the compliance board has received the full log from Gate C14. They are tracking every phrase spoken in the last 3 minutes. Security's premature escalation has been flagged. The attendant's denial of service without verification has been noted. A hush fell over the gate. Someone whispered, she was not making it up. Another person murmured, this is bigger than just a cup of water. The officer swallowed hard, his composure cracking like ice under pressure. Dr. Reed, please understand, we are only trying to maintain order. Naomi answered, order without fairness is not order. It is control. The flight attendant's breath caught at that. Her eyes darted toward the gathering crowd. Realizing that every single witness had now become part of the story, she could no longer rewrite. A young man holding his phone stepped forward and said, I have the whole thing recorded. She did not raise her voice once. You did. A middle-aged woman chimed in. It looked like you grabbed her without cause. The officer bristled, his chin lifting defensively. I followed protocol. Naomi's voice lowered. Then your protocol is broken. She did not say it harshly. She said it as if stating a fact she had spent a lifetime learning to articulate. The flight attendant's eyes glistened slightly, though she fought to hide it. We did not know who you were. Naomi replied, and that is exactly the point. She paused just long enough for every word to settle. Respect should not depend on recognition. The room held still, as if suspended between what had already happened and what was about to happen. Across the gate, the airport supervisor finally approached, pushing past the ring of spectators. His expression was tense, his badge clipped to his vest, his radio already buzzing with messages he could not afford to ignore. Dr. Reed, he said, out of breath. We have received the compliance alerts. I am here to observe and assist. The flight attendant's face fell. The officer's jaw tightened. The supervisor continued. We have reason to believe procedure was mishandled. We are reviewing all conduct at this gate immediately. Naomi nodded once. Good. It is time. Her daughter took a cautious step forward, her voice a fragile, hopeful thread. Mom, do we have to stay here? Naomi looked at her daughter with a mixture of strength and tenderness. We stay, she said softly, because this is where people learn the difference between authority and accountability. Her daughter nodded slowly, understanding more now than she had at the start of the day. Naomi faced the staff once more. You tried to remove us from this space, she said. But the truth is, you were the ones who did not belong in the way you used your power. And as the supervisor began documenting every detail, the passengers gathered closer, knowing they were witnessing the exact moment the ground shifted beneath Gate C14, the moment silence broke and the reckoning truly began. The airport supervisor had barely begun his documentation when another voice entered the scene, not from the crowd, not from the staff, but from Naomi Reed's phone. It was calm, measured, and impossibly precise. Dr. Reed, this is Carla. Compliance has elevated your request to executive review. Do you want to proceed with the next phase? The flight attendant's breath hitched. The officer stiffened. The trainee's eyes widened as if witnessing something he had only heard about during late-night break room rumors. Naomi did not look away from the staff in front of her. Yes, she said. Proceed. Carla replied. Understood. Delta 9 full activation is in progress. Review board online. System override is standing by. A ripple of murmurs moved through the passengers. Someone whispered, this is like watching a live court. Another added, no, this is accountability in real time. The airport supervisor shifted uncomfortably, glancing at the officer. I need your badge, please. I am confirming your actions for the incident log. The officer hesitated, his throat bobbing as he tried to swallow the realization of what was unfolding. Slowly, he unclipped his badge and handed it over. The supervisor scanned it with a handheld device. A red error flashed instantly. Access restricted, the device announced. The officer blinked. What? That cannot be right. The supervisor frowned and tried again. The same red flash. Your security clearance is temporarily locked, the supervisor said. Compliance must have flagged your account. A soft gasp spread through the gate. The flight attendant's face drained of color. Wait, she said, if his badge is locked, then mine. She lifted her own badge to the scanner mounted on the wall. It turned red before she even touched it. Her voice collapsed into a whisper. No, no, this is not happening. Naomi watched her with a calm that was neither vengeful nor triumphant. It was the calm of someone who had spent years being dismissed and was finally seeing a system respond rather than excuse. This is exactly what happens, Naomi said, when you build procedures around assumptions instead of ethics. The officer regained a spark of defiance. You cannot do this without an internal investigation. Naomi replied. That investigation began the moment you grabbed me. A middle-aged man stepped forward from the back of the crowd. I saw it, he said. You did not approach her with conversation. You approached her like she was already guilty. A woman added, you denied that girl water. Who does that? The flight attendant's hands shook. I followed what I thought was protocol. Naomi's reply was quiet, but it cut through the room. Protocol does not require cruelty. Her daughter looked up at her, pride beginning to replace fear. The supervisor turned to Naomi. Dr. Reed, the executive review team, is requesting your statement. Do you want to make it here, or in a private room? Naomi glanced around the gate, at the passengers who had witnessed everything, at the trainees who were learning what leadership looked like, at her daughter, who stood straighter now. Here, she said. This is where it happened. This is where it is addressed. Carla's voice echoed through Naomi's phone once more. Dr. Reed, when you are ready, issue your directive. The officer stepped forward slightly, desperate to salvage anything. Dr. Reed, please, I can explain. This is all moving too fast. Naomi's eyes sharpened just a fraction. It only feels fast because accountability has chased you down after years of walking in the opposite direction. The flight attendant's voice cracked. I made a mistake. I did not mean. Naomi held up a hand, stopping her without force, without anger, simply with the authority of someone who no longer had time for excuses. A mistake, Naomi said, is when you mispronounce a name. What happened here was not a mistake. What happened here was a choice. The gate fell silent again. Then Naomi lifted her phone. Carla, she said, confirm system readiness. Carla replied, system is ready for your command. Good, Naomi said. Prepare to log disciplinary action. The officer's mouth fell open. The flight attendant shook her head in disbelief. The trainee stared at Naomi as though witnessing a masterclass in justice. And then Naomi said the sentence that would define the next chapter of Gate C14. Begin the removals. The supervisor raised his clipboard. The passengers leaned in. And the staff who had tried to humiliate her realized their reckoning had truly arrived. The words, begin the removals, did not rise above normal conversation, yet they carried the force of something far larger than volume. The supervisor straightened immediately, as if the air pressure in Gate C14 had changed. He tapped his tablet, and within seconds the screen lit up with compliance data that made both the officer and the flight attendant blanch. The officer attempted one last stand, his voice cracking as he spoke. Dr. Reed, please, this is not necessary. We can resolve this through retraining. There is no need for termination. Naomi looked at him with a calm that was almost unnerving. You grabbed a woman who was standing beside her daughter. You threatened to remove a child from an airport gate for asking for water. You escalated without cause. This is not a retraining issue. The officer opened his mouth again, but the supervisor cut in, reading directly from his screen. Officer Doyle, your conduct has been flagged for immediate suspension pending full investigation. Compliance is requiring your removal from the floor right now. The officer froze for a moment before attempting to salvage dignity with a stiff posture, but the eyes around him, every passenger, every witness, left him nowhere to stand. The supervisor gestured to another security staff member, who approached slowly. Escort him to administrative processing, he instructed. As the officer was led away, a murmur moved through the gate, not loud enough to be a cheer, not joyful enough to be relief. It was the murmur of a reckoning unfolding in real time. The flight attendant stepped backward, as if instinctively trying to disappear into the crowd, but Naomi's gaze held her in place without even moving. Flight attendant Marsh, the supervisor said, his voice steady but not unkind. Your denial of service without verification, your premature escalation, and your refusal to acknowledge impact have all been documented. Compliance has issued an immediate directive. Marsh's eyes filled with panic, but her voice came out defensive. I did not know who she was. If I had known. Naomi interrupted gently, and that gentleness cut deeper than anger ever could. If you had known, you would have acted differently. That is exactly the problem. The flight attendant's shoulders trembled. Naomi continued, my daughter should not need status for you to offer basic humanity. I should not need recognition for you to withhold your assumptions. The supervisor cleared his throat, reading the directive. Effective immediately, Flight Attendant Marsh, your credentials are suspended. You are to report to Human Resources and Compliance Processing. You are not permitted to continue duty today. Marsh's badge was scanned. It flashed red. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. She reached for words, then for excuses, but they collapsed before escaping her throat. A woman in the crowd spoke quietly. You treated her like she did not belong. Another added, this is what happens when people finally face consequences. Marsh blinked through tears she refused to let fall, then stepped aside as the second security staff member approached her. Naomi's daughter watched with a mixture of shock and understanding, as if she were witnessing the world tilt into its correct shape for the first time. Mom, she whispered, you did not even raise your voice. Naomi placed a hand on her shoulder. You do not have to raise your voice when the truth is loud enough. The supervisor turned to the trainee. Trainee Patel, your statement will be included in the report. For now, you are to remain on standby while we assess your involvement. Patel looked terrified. Did I do something wrong? Naomi shook her head gently. You did something right. The supervisor glanced at Naomi, uncertain. Dr. Reed, compliance wants to know if you intend to issue further directives. They are prepared to take your full statement. Naomi looked across the gate, at the passengers who had watched everything, at the staff who now understood the weight of their actions, at her daughter who deserved better than silence. She lifted her phone once more. Carla, she said calmly, notify the board that I will be issuing additional actions. This gate has more to answer for. Carla responded instantly. Understood, Dr. Reed. The board is standing by. The passengers leaned in, breath held, ready for the next moment in a story that was no longer just about a cup of water or a delay. It was about what happens when someone wields authority with prejudice, and what happens when someone with real power finally stands in front of them. Naomi lowered her phone slightly and said, we are not finished. And Gate C14 felt the ground shift once more. The crowd at Gate C14 held its breath as the gravity of Naomi Reed's words settled into the polished airport floor. The removed officer and suspended flight attendant were already being escorted down the terminal, moving like shadows swallowed by consequences they once believed would never touch them. But Naomi had said it clearly, calmly, undeniably. We are not finished. And she meant every syllable. The supervisor shifted nervously, clutching his tablet as updates flashed in rapid succession. Dr. Reed, he said carefully, the executive review team is requesting clarification on the extent of your directives. Naomi nodded once, a controlled gesture that quieted even the distant noise of rolling luggage. Then let us clarify, she said. There were other failures here. A ripple moved through the passengers. Some stepped closer, others held their phones higher. Everyone understood they were witnessing a moment that did not happen in daily life, a moment most people only imagined saying out loud, but never had the power to enforce. Naomi turned toward the trainee. Patel, she said, her tone steady but infused with something protective. When you tried to speak earlier, before the situation escalated, what happened? Patel swallowed hard. I told Flight Attendant Marsh that the girl's boarding pass was premium class. I told her she should be allowed water. She told me to stay quiet if I wanted to keep my job. The supervisor's eyes widened. Is that true? Marsh froze mid-step. Guilt plastered across her face as if truth had reached out and grabbed her by the collar. I never threatened him. I only meant. Naomi cut her off. You meant to silence him so your behavior would not be questioned. Marsh opened her mouth, but no words came. Patel looked down, ashamed for something that was never his to carry. Naomi continued. A workplace where truth is punished is not a workplace. It is a machine built to hide misconduct. A woman in the crowd nodded. My daughter works in customer service. They tell her the same thing. Stay quiet. even when something is wrong. Another passenger added, "It is always the young ones who see everything but are told to say nothing." The supervisor tapped rapidly on his tablet. "Dr. Reed, based on that statement, we can log an additional compliance breach for suppression of reporting." Naomi gave a single nod. "Do so." Marsh's eyes filled with panic again. "Is there anything I can say to fix this?" Naomi held her gaze, not cruelly, but honestly. "The first opportunity to fix it was when you refused her water. The second was when you escalated without cause. The third was when you silenced someone who tried to tell the truth. There are no opportunities left." Marsh looked at the floor as if waiting for it to open and swallow her. Naomi's daughter stepped slightly forward, voice soft but certain. "Mom, are they going to lose their jobs forever?" Naomi turned to her gently. "They are losing the privilege of misusing them. That is all." The supervisor cleared his throat. "There is also the matter of the bystander staff member at the podium," he said cautiously. People turned toward a second attendant, the one who had stood at a distance earlier, nervously pretending to rearrange papers and avoid eye contact. Naomi looked at him. "You saw what happened." The attendant's voice shook. "Yes, Dr. Reed. I did." "And what did you do?" He winced. "Nothing. I was afraid to say anything. Marsh outtranks me." Naomi's expression did not harden, but it grew heavier. Fear explains silence. It does not excuse it. He nodded miserably. "I understand." Naomi spoke clearly, so every witness could hear. "Accountability is not only for those who act. It is also for those who stand by and let harm happen." The supervisor entered another notation, his fingers moving with the precision of someone who understood the weight of every keystroke. Patel took a small step forward. "Dr. Reed," he said quietly, "not everyone here is like them. Some of us want to do things right." Naomi gave him a look that held both recognition and resolve. "Then you will be the ones who rebuild what they broke." His eyes widened, hope flickering like a new flame. Carla's voice came through Naomi's phone again. "Dr. Reed, the board is requesting your official directive for final disposition of personnel involved." Marsh turned pale. The bystanding attendant held his breath. Patel looked terrified again. The supervisor waited. Naomi inhaled slowly, grounding herself in the moment, in the truth that had unfolded piece by piece, in the eyes of the daughter who needed to see what justice looked like. Then she said, "Carla, begin processing final terminations for Officer Doyle and Flight Attendant Marsh. Document Patel for commendation review. Document the podium attendant for mandatory retraining and performance review." The passengers murmured, but Naomi did not pause. "And inform the board," she continued, "that this gate requires a full bias audit immediately." Carla responded without hesitation. "Understood, Dr. Reed. Executing now." The supervisor lowered his tablet respectfully. Patel's breath escaped in a shaky exhale. Marsh's shoulders crumpled. Naomi took her daughter's hand. "We are almost finished," she said. And Gate C14 realized something profound. Justice did not have to shout. It only had to stand its ground. The terminal screens glowed softly above Gate C14, as if the airport itself were pausing to witness what came next. The passengers who had gathered did not disperse. Instead, they stood in a loose semicircle around Naomi Reed and her daughter, forming an unspoken wall of support. The suspended officer and terminated flight attendant were already out of sight, escorted toward offices where consequences waited for signatures and formalities. But the atmosphere at Gate C14 remained electric, the air charged with the unmistakable feeling that something larger than a personnel decision had taken place. The supervisor lowered his tablet and stepped forward with a respect he had not shown at the beginning. "Dr. Reed," he said quietly, "the board confirms all directives. Terminations are in motion. The commendation review for trainee Patel is also active, and the bias audit has been initiated. They expect your final statement when you are ready." Naomi nodded. She turned toward Patel, whose face held both shock and disbelief, like someone waiting to be told he had misheard everything. "You spoke when others chose silence," she said. "Integrity is rarely comfortable, but it is always seen." Patel swallowed hard. "Thank you, Dr. Reed. I just wanted to do what was right." "And you did," Naomi said. "Remember that." The podium attendant, still standing stiffly near his station, looked down in shame. "I should have spoken too," he murmured. Naomi regarded him with steady eyes. "Then learn from this moment. Silence can be corrected. Harm cannot. He nodded, the lesson etched deeply across his expression. Naomi's daughter tugged her mother's sleeve gently. "Mom," she whispered, "can we leave now?" Naomi looked at her with warmth that softened the edges of everything that had happened. "Yes," she said. "But first, there is something people need to hear." She stepped into the center of the open space, not standing on a chair or raising her voice, but every person present instinctively leaned forward. It was the kind of moment that did not need elevation to feel monumental. Naomi spoke clearly, her words carrying the weight of every witness, every slight, every injustice that had unfolded under the fluorescent lights. "What happened here today," she began, "was not about water, or delays, or misunderstanding. It was about the quiet assumptions that shape how we are treated before we speak a single word." The passengers stayed silent, reverent. Naomi continued, "My daughter was not denied service because of a policy. She was denied because someone looked at her and decided she was less deserving. I was not grabbed because I posed a threat. I was grabbed because someone decided I belonged in a category I have spent my entire life pushing against." Her voice was not angry, it was resolute. Bias does not need shouting to be dangerous. It lives in the quick judgments, the split-second decisions, the way one person is treated compared to another. A man near the back spoke softly. "You are right. We all saw it." Naomi nodded. "And that is why accountability matters. Not to punish, but to correct, not to shame, but to rebuild." She looked at her daughter with pride. She deserves a world where dignity is the default, not a privilege. The supervisor took a small step forward. "Dr. Reed, would you like us to escort you to the executive lounge while we finish processing the audit?" Naomi shook her head. "No, I will leave the same way I arrived, quietly and without spectacle. That is how respect should begin." She turned to Patel. "Walk with us for a moment." He blinked in surprise. "Me?" "Yes," she said. "You should see what courage looks like from the other side." As they moved toward the gate entrance, passengers began to clap, not a loud, chaotic applause, but a steady, measured acknowledgement. Some nodded in solidarity. Others simply watched with gratitude that someone had finally said the things so many felt but never dared to articulate. Naomi paused once more and faced the crowd. Her final words were simple, almost soft, but they settled into every corner of the terminal. "I did not raise my voice today. I raised the standard." The applause grew as she and her daughter walked away, the supervisor documenting the aftermath, the staff absorbing the lesson, the passengers carrying the moment with them like a truth they could no longer unsee. And long after Naomi left Gate C14, people would remember not the confrontation, not the suspension, not even the dramatic override, but the calm power of a woman who refused to let prejudice stand unchallenged and showed everyone watching what real leadership looks like.